when I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Take my hat off.
I'm South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Mars?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Johnny.
And that'll be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. That'll be you, that'll be me, that'll be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
Welcome. This is part 2. This is a double-hour show. We have with us physician, cardiologist, Dr. Jorge Alvarez. I'm not going to read the whole bio, but he is the interventional and structural heart disease cardiologist. And I'm going to ask him what we know what MD is as medical doctor with the FACC, FSCAI, what that is. But he's board certified in cardiovascular disease and interventional cardiology. He practices primarily out of the Cardiology Clinic of San Antonio's Medical Center location. He was derailed from a promising football career. I can see you on the football field. After being sidelined in high school due to injuries, took a summer job at a local car wash where the owner offered to put him through college as long as he continued to work there part-time. With the help of the car wash owner, Dr. Alvarez went on to become a successful general and interventional cardiologist. Okay, Doc, so first of all, what is interventional? I can imagine, but I'll just ask.
Yeah, so interventional cardiology is basically I am a educated plumber, overeducated plumber. So when people's arteries are blocked, I'm the one that goes in. If you're having a heart attack, I go in and I open up the vessels and kind of that life or death situation. Your general cardiologist, I do that as well, which is managing your blood pressure, trying to keep you out of that operating room and keep you healthy. But if it don't work, I go in and try to unplug those arteries for you.
So, Doc, this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and let me just say, bienvenido, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I have some Latino roots myself, my grandfather. Bring this into perspective. Clearly, I'm a black man in America. What was your experience? Did you, for instance, run into discrimination in medical school or in your ascension? Help me out.
Maybe not necessarily discrimination upon with other people. It was more so my feeling. My parents never went to college. I was the first one to go complete college, and then went through medical school. I for a lot of times, tried to be better. Wanted to make myself better and to feel equal sometimes. So it wasn't really a discrimination on one side, is more so the pressure I put on myself, which is, even to this day, still drives me to want to be better. When you get into this kind of atmosphere, I didn't go to some big premier college. I didn't go to Harvard or any of these other places. I went to our college here in town, but you know what? I made the best of it. I made my own success, and I worked for it, and I reap the benefits of it now. And I encourage other people that doesn't matter where you go, it's what you make of that opportunity. And it's only up to us to make that opportunity. You can't rely on other people's to make your success.
Now, you remind me of somebody special in my life. Are you a self-motivator?
I would say I'm self-motivated. I'm driven for a lot of reasons. Driven to want to do good for my family. Driven to want to make my family proud, and that's my whole family. My mom had 11 siblings. My dad had 1, and so big family. And it's just, when you get to family reunions and they're all so proud of you, and they all have friends that come and see me from all around the state, and they brag about you a little bit. So, driven to want to do good, but then also driven to want to serve my community. It's nice to say that I'm from here, and the people that reap the benefits of what education and what I kind of put off. There was a lot of things that I missed so that I could be where I'm at right now. Whether it was family reunion, just like family reunions. You have tests, you have things. This was a goal, and so you put things off and you delay things because you want to get to a certain point. You want to be the best that you can potentially be. And if that meant I had to work a little bit harder, study a little bit longer, I was going to do that. And so that's what drives me, is to be able to provide great care to the people of this area. But then also, hopefully, there's a halo effect that I serve as a mentor to students, particularly students that are, first in college and things like that, and want to aspire to be a physician, and, didn't have that kind of upbringing, didn't have that role models that they had, and trying to be that for them so that they can see, like, look, he was a self-made, and if they want it bad enough, you never take no for an answer. You just keep on pushing. You keep on pushing until you get what you want.
Were you born in Texas?
I was born in Texas. Yes, sir. I was born in a border town called Laredo, Texas. And then my parents moved here into San Antonio when I was about 5. So I literally did all my education, kindergarten through the 28th grade, I say, within 5 miles of my home.
Where'd you get the idea to be a doctor?
My dad was a medical sales rep growing up. And so, I would go on calls with him. And then in the summer times, I would work in the warehouse that he was employed at, the warehouse that they would bring in supplies. And when I got old enough, I would go on deliveries, and just kind of seeing the respect and the way a physician operates within a community, and just the way that they're able to provide that sense that people look up to. But then I actually had a pretty significant injury in high school, and just remember, being somewhat devastated. But then the physician that took care of me at that point in time really kind of patched me together and, patted me on the back and said, all right, go out there. And I just remember that relief of being able to go do what at that point in time I love to do, which is, even though it's not the same, I get to give that back right now. There are times people come to me sometimes at the most devastating parts of their lives, right? They're dying, or they have no other hope. They don't feel well. And then you're able to apply what I've learned and the resources and get people feeling, and it affects the whole family unit, right? If it's the dad that's out, or if it's the grandparents that are out and having issues, the whole family benefits from this, not just the individual.
So you took that experience when you had a football injury?
Yes, sir.
And you remember how the doctor helped you to heal, and you now give that gift to the best of your ability to others.
That's my goal every morning when I wake up.
I gotta ask you this, Doc. If you're the only doctor in the family, you're the first one to go to college, everybody hits you up for money.
You know, it is. There's a kind of a steadfast rule. You know, I don't mix business and money and family and business together. I will definitely help out.
Uncle George, I need 2,500.
Yeah, so I'm sure I'm sure there's something I can find for us to be able to work something out. You know, I'm always going to give to my family, but it's never going to be for free.
So like work, nephew,
yeah. So a nephew, then, you know, we need help around the house, you know, whether it's doing odd jobs or even if there's somebody that I know may need, you know, sometimes we have patients that need help with transportation or whatever, you know, drive this person for me to clinic and make sure that they make it to where they need to do, kind of giving back a little bit to the community in that aspect. And, you know, you can earn a little bit of money that way. And, but it's never for free.
Doc, I live in Baltimore. We see the effects of heroin, cocaine, crack cocaine. There in Texas, you're on a border town. Like if I go to the nearest eatery, there are people who work there from Honduras, from El Salvador. What is it that people in the rest of America don't understand about living in a border town? The gangs, the people fleeing certain conditions in South America. What did you grow up seeing?
Well, so, you know, I was born in Laredo, but moved to San Antonio. So it's a couple hours removed, but still went back to Laredo quite often, right? And what you see is really no different than what you see here in our states. You know, people are lucky that they're here and people want to get to a better place. We talk about the gangs and the drugs, but we have to realize that that's still such a small minority of the people that are just trying to better themselves, right? No difference than me trying to better myself and become what I wanted to do. Most people are okay with working, and most people are okay with, you know, earning their way and providing for it's an innate goal for us, right? We want to better ourselves and do more. I would say 90+% of these people want to do that. They just want the opportunity. And that's where, you know, I think if given the opportunity, people will surprise you. You know, they may even grow up to be a cardiologist someday, but it's having that opportunity. Sometimes they just don't have those opportunities where you see, but we see that here in Texas. I'm sure you see it there in Baltimore. You know, if people just need to have that opportunity and have somebody to look up to, and we'd all just be a better place.
I don't know if you know of the artist Lauryn Hill, nicknamed L Boogie, but on her first album, she had a quote that in her travels all over the world, what differentiates one child from another is not ability, but access to opportunity, access to education, access to love. My lady has told me about a challenge that Latinos, that the Hispanic community deals with. That's my bodyguard. That they deal with, that the rest of us have no idea about, who speak English. Can you tell me about what you have seen in terms of the bilingual challenges of speaking Spanish? And I've seen and I've paid attention to people say speak English, and if we really knew the history of this country, so easily we could be speaking Spanish. I mean, half of the Midwest was Mexico, according to a map I've seen, and Florida was owned by Spain until 1831. But as growing up speaking English, I have no idea, and the people I grew up with have no idea of the challenges, the mental, the psychological, that one has to deal with when somebody comes back at you and totally misunderstands history and throws the Spanish thing up as a barrier.
Yeah, you know, I think particularly as physicians, and depending on where you practice, obviously, I mean, we have a very affluent Hispanic population, and I find that, you know, to see the smile on the patient's face when they realize that I speak Spanish, and you just see that tension leave their body, like, okay, I'm going to be able to communicate. And that's really, one of the big challenges. And in both situations, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're Black, if you're Hispanic, whatever it may be, Chinese, that a lot of times keeps people from getting appropriate health care. That's part of this disparities problem that we have, that there may be access, but if they don't know, they don't feel comfortable because they feel insecure about asking the questions, then they're not going to ask it. And then what ends up being something that's completely avoidable ends up being an emergency, and that's, we all need to understand and strive. I would say that most people that don't speak very good English or don't speak English at all would love to learn a little bit of that, at least to be able to communicate to some form, right? And once you break down that barrier, once you break down that language barrier, there's so much that you can learn from other groups, people, that my patients teach me something every day. I'm grateful for it. You just have to be willing to listen.
Well, I tell you what, I watched that Canelo Alvarez. Y'all got the same last name. I never even thought about that. Did you see Canelo?
Yeah, he's a great fighter, isn't he?
He's one of the greats. I mean, the young man had 30 fights. Canelo's had 60. And the young man had been knocking people out. But he had, like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get hit.
That's right.
Now, Canelo was just unshakable, unmovable. And it's like, a grown man fighting a little boy, even though they were roughly the same age. Definitely a Canelo fan.
Yeah, so am I.
Okay, so let's get to some of this cardiovascular stuff. And I would imagine, okay, so let me ask you this. Are there any particular challenges facing the Hispanic community? Like, I know in the Black community, you got to cut back on too much pork, God forbid, pig feet, chitlins, those things that full of saturated fats that clog up the arteries, grease, fried foods. Much of the food in inner city Baltimore is fried unless you cook it yourself. Does the Hispanic community deal with similar challenges?
Oh yeah, we have our crutches too. There's definitely food. Diet is definitely a big portion of the cardiovascular risk, right? It leads to high blood pressure, your cholesterol, diabetes, which I think most minority populations have a big issue with. Those are the things that I always tell people. There are three things you can't do anything about. You can't do anything about your age, your family, genetics, and your gender. But the things that you can control, your diet, your cholesterol, smoking, whether you're diabetic, your blood pressure, how much activity you do, those are things that you have control of. And those are the things that you need to focus on in trying to limit your risk for heart disease. And that transcends every gender and race. That's just the steadfast rule. You can be mad at who your parents are, but they're still your parents. So you can't do anything about that. And if you're getting older every day, then you're doing okay. So you just have to focus on those things. And once people focus on those things and take responsibility, right? A lot of times it's I don't have a good diet because my wife doesn't cook well for me. Well, then it's a family, and not only that, people don't realize that as adults, you're affecting your children as well. There's a reason why the average age of heart attacks and other health problems is lowering because we don't feed our children very well. We don't encourage them to get out and ride around on bikes and move around and do things. So we need to realize that a lot of the problem is ourselves and make those changes for the better, not only for you. And I will tell you, one of the things I tell patients all the time is that, especially if they have children, I'm like, if your child had a medical condition that if I told you they have to get out and walk for 30 minutes every day and eat a little bit better, would you let them get away not doing that? And they always shake their head no. Like, no, I would be on them. then you should apply that same criteria to yourself. Got to take
Doc, you look like you're old enough that when you grew up, punishment for you was, George, you can't go outside for 3 days.
That's right. Go to your room and stay in there.
Punishment today is you have to go outside with no device.
Right.
So I want to ask you just generally about this, what technology is doing to our communities, to our families. I've seen 2-year-olds. Hell, my own daughter, she was 9 months in the days of the Palm Pilot. She did dit. And next thing I know, I lost 1,000 phone numbers.
Oh yeah. No, it's it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge in this technology age. The question is to try to use it to your benefit. I will tell you personally, from with my children, my wife and I had decided that we would let them earn their minutes. So however much time they spent outside is how much time they got on the device, right? So if you're outside for 30 minutes, well, then you get 30 minutes. If you're outside for 3 hours and then it gets dark and you come inside, well, guess what? You have 3 hours on your device. And so that was our solution to try to do that. And also encouraged, I included my children a lot of times, like when we would go to exercise. In fact, funny story, I remember one day, my son, he was probably 9 or 10, and I made him, woke up and went to go exercise, and I was doing a plank. I don't know if you know what a plank is, where you kind of hold it on the ground and you're sitting there hovering above the ground for a little bit. And I was making him do it with me, and he kind of looked over at me it was a Sunday morning, and he goes, "How come we can't be like normal families and just wake up and read the paper and drink coffee?" And I said, well, we're going to do that. We just got to do this first. You have to invest in yourself, invest in the day, and then you can, take apart the benefits, reap the rewards for the rest of the day. But you got to take that short amount of time. And it's not a whole lot of time. It's 30 minutes. I tell patients all the time, if I followed you home, I'm willing to bet I could find 30 minutes that you wasted doing nothing, sitting on the couch, when you could have just put on your sneakers, gone for a 30-minute walk, done something, and then you would have been done. And they inevitably shake their heads yes.
What has the pandemic done to Americans as a whole?
Other than the obvious things, I think our psyche, our ability to get out, I will say it was a dark time there for a while. It was very dark. People stayed home. They didn't want to leave. They didn't want to converse with neighbors. Last night was National Night Out. It was great to see my neighbors out, joining the police. The firemen all came by. We had food, and it had been a while. It had been almost 2 years since we had done that. So it was nice to see everybody out and doing that. So I'm hoping that it's a short time that we did not converse with our neighbors, and that things are going to get a little bit better from now on.
But are some people stuck? I mean, I know people older than me. I'm 58. I know people a few years older, and I've had to nudge them. And I probably had to be nudged once or twice myself, like, hey, you've been indoors long enough. Got to go get some vitamin D. Got to see that sun.
Right. So I think a lot of that's driven by fear of misinformation. That's it's always easier to listen to the bad news than the actual good news, right? So things like the vaccines work, and people are getting out, and restaurants are opening up, and people are moving. I see more people out and about now than what we have in a long time. And part of that is they're just tired of staying home. But the other part of it, the ones that are staying home, though, it's fear. It's fear that drives them. So, hopefully by example and by being out and doing the things, they see other people do things. And we've made it really easy, though, too, right? You get groceries delivered to your house now. You don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore.
But it's made us lazy.
Oh, absolutely. So, and that's a difficult thing. But to stay healthy, though, you don't necessarily have to go to a gym. You just have to find somewhere, a park or even around your house, grab your neighbors, neighbors that that they can need help, and ask them, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do things. Make it a community thing. That's the thing that we've lost, is the sense of community, the ownership of our own communities, and be a part of it.
So I saw a situation where it was a video, maybe 100 Latinos. There was a house, a casa, and the house was falling down. And they went in about 6 p.m. and by 6 a.m. the next morning, this house was rebuilt. And it was a Black person who shared this video wherever I saw it. It was a few years back. And I was so reminded of the significance of work ethic. I also know that by the second, third, fourth generation, whether it's Latino, whether it's Korean, the third, fourth generation start getting soft. I mean, I think back to when Black people would work hotel jobs, would work in the supply company, in the warehouse. Tell me about the work ethic, the significance of the work ethic for you growing up.
Yeah, so, it was always instilled in me that it didn't matter what I did. My dad used to tell me, it doesn't matter what you grow up to do, as long as you're the best. And as long as you give it 100%. And at the end of the day, you look at whatever it is that you made, did, were a part of, that you're proud of, and that it makes you want to get up in the next morning. The problem, I think the work ethic goes from people just don't know what they want, right? They've been, since they were born, they've been sold to, right? And so they just expect a lot of things to come to them. And that drive of, if you want something, you have to go out and get it. You have to work hard, and that benefits the way you feel. It's funny. I used to complain about getting up every Saturday morning to cut the grass, but I love the way that grass smelled and the way it looked when I was done, or washing the car. I worked at a car wash. It's funny. I'm going to be 50 years old, and nothing drives me more crazy than having a dirty car, and I think that's because I worked at a car wash for such a long time, and it drives my kids crazy because, they're a driving age now. I have one in college and one that's a junior in high school, and I see their car pull in and I'm like, that's dirty. And just go to the car wash, be a part of it. My oldest son now has worked at a car wash every summer since he's come back.
I'm going to the car wash as soon as I get off of this show. I promise you, Doc.
Yeah. It's just, but it's you have to, but it's pride, right? It's pride and ownership in the things that you have, and you take care of those things, and you work hard, you earn things. And you look back and you're like, I did that, or I earned that. And we've kind of lost that because a lot of things are just kind of given or expected to be given to us. And it shouldn't be that way. That's where we've lost that drive.
You're from Texas. Does that mean you're a Cowboys fan?
I am a Cowboys fan, and I wear cowboy boots with my scrubs. So, yes, I am a Cowboys fan.
Who is your favorite Cowboy of all time? Roger Staubach? What was it, a running back? Yes, some pretty good running backs.
I was an offensive lineman, so I kind of always looked on those guys. I mean, the running backs and everything else, that's all great, but they couldn't have been great without their linemen. So
Tony Dorsett, that's who I was trying to think.
That's right. Tony Dorsett, Emmitt Smith. I mean, all those guys, Michael Irvin. I do look, I think my favorite Cowboy of all time probably would have been, like, back in the day, would have been Randy White growing up. He was a terror defensive lineman, right? Then you had Stepnoski, who was a center, who I thought was great because he wasn't huge, but he was smart and knew his position very well. But then you look at the leaders of that team, guys like Staubach, Aikman. I think Aikman is kind of a cool individual, right? Has done it right, lives a good life, loyal, stayed with the team. I mean, there's something to be said about loyalty these days, right? When you get picked by a team, you work really hard and you stay with that team. to make them better. And that's, we've lost a little bit of loyalty within our professional sports, I think.
Well, tell me about this. If you paid that kind of attention, how much time do we have? I know you have patients waiting.
Oh, no. I'm okay. I was getting a phone call on my Apple Watch.
Okay. So when you know that many players, and I do not know for the Hispanic or the Latino community in terms of players, but I know I've seen in the Black community a lot of athletes, they're broke 5 years after they leave the league. Do you see a similar thing? Or, I mean, people spend money on these material things, and then I could see them easily ending up in the emergency room, and you have to save their life. Maybe they got into cocaine, maybe they got into a broken heart. I don't know, but I know being broke after being a millionaire, that would just, I don't know. I wouldn't need anybody to kick my butt. I'd be kicking my own butt.
It's funny. We maybe not with players, but what we did see a lot was here in Texas. They saw a lot of overnight millionaires because of the oil. I saw people that would come in 1 year and had difficulties with their getting their medications. And we have medications that we can sample, and so you just kind of help them along and say, you just have to come in and ask. I always tell people that I have a closet full of medicines. You just have to come and ask me. I just can't give them to you, but and we will help. I would rather they come and ask me than go without their medicine, right? I'll find a way to figure it out. And there's so many help programs out there to help people get their medicines. But they'd come in the next year and they'd show me a picture of the brand new, $100,000 truck, and they're wearing Rolex, and their kids have brand new Air Jordans, and I'm like, man, I don't even have that kind of stuff. And then they still say, well, they can't get their medicines. It's priorities. But then they come back the next year and realize that, well, they stopped, oil prices went to $10 a barrel as opposed to 40. And now they were spending for the now and not saving for the later. And you see that it doesn't matter. There's just when people get a lot of money that way, we just don't know what to do with it, right? We want that instant gratification and don't realize that, it's not always going to be there. So you have to plan. I wish there was somebody that would teach some of these athletes in college or wherever they're at, have somebody help them with that planning aspect. But then again, I'm going to be honest. I think that starts at day one in the sandbox, right? From your parents. If your parents are good spenders and teach you to have a level head and move things forward, you're probably not going to end up broke.
My mother had 3 rules. I shared it earlier this morning. At 18, you're leaving. In the meantime, don't bring any babies across that door. And number 3, own your house.
Yeah.
What did your mom tell you?
My parents, very similar. Not so much the 18 rule, but definitely don't bring any babies. But the other part of it, I think, was, they always told me to, you can never do anything about the cards you were dealt. It's just how you play your hand, right? So you can't do anything about certain situations. Life happens to us, but it's how you respond to that challenge, to rise up, and then to always try to be the best and do the best that you can be. My dad would tell me, he didn't care if I grew up to be a garbage collector, as long as I was the best garbage collector out there. And that's what mattered, and that I was happy with it. So that was kind of the motivation. And I tell my kids the same thing that right now. I don't care what they end up being, as long as they wake up happy and that they try to be the best at it. That's all that matters.
Do you have a top 10 list of things? You mentioned no smoking, exercise, and you mentioned diet and activity. In terms of the heart, let's go to diet.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of raw ginger or boiling ginger, peppers, onions, garlic. Are these good for you?
Yeah, my rule to my patients is that everything is okay in moderation, right? And so it's about planning. If you know you're going to go out with family on a Friday night and big barbecue and, maybe have some margaritas or beer or whatever it is that you like to do, well, then you don't have breakfast tacos and eggs and all sorts of stuff in the morning. You don't eat a hamburger for lunch. You plan. You plan for that. And then you have your splurges. You moderate everything. But it's when you fall into that trap, oh, I'm going to eat something really bad for breakfast and really bad for lunch and then really bad for dinner. Well, then you really didn't help yourself out in any way. There's also things that you can do when you do eat. We've gotten to this point as a society that we don't ever eat off of plates anymore. It seems like every time you go out to eat, everything's served on a platter, that you can serve 3 people on. So try to cut those portions down a little bit, and help yourself. You don't have to leave the table so full that you don't feel like walking. You just want to go take a nap. It's okay to enjoy those things. So, yeah, I think I'm pretty lenient when it comes to that. It's just the planning and being smart about what you do. The same thing goes with exercise. You don't need to go out and run a marathon. You just need to go out and walk for 30 minutes and be a little bit more active. Those are all important. I think another really bad misconception that people have is that you have to be skinny in order to be healthy, right? We're not all the same cut. I know a lot of skinny people with really bad hearts, and I know a lot of really big people that can go out and run 2 miles right now. And it's interestingly enough, if you can run 2 miles, you're probably top 90% in the country. There's not a whole lot of people that can do that. So that's the base. We're not all built the same. We're not all 6'2", 180 pounds, 160 pounds. We are who we are inside, but we can be good with that.
What subject was your biggest challenge in becoming a doctor?
Probably math. Math was a tough one. And I always attribute it to it that I just couldn't sometimes grasp those concepts. The sciences and all those other things I liked, and that's, I tell my children that there's certain things that come easier to you, and those are the things that you need to kind of assimilate to. If you don't like science, don't try to be a doctor. But if you like English and history, then be a lawyer, be a teacher. There's other things you can do. If you like math, be an architect. There's certain things that you can do that will make you happy that people are just better at. You shouldn't try to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? So you need to do what makes you happy and what you're good at. I think sometimes we try to make everybody equal and make everybody good at everything, and that doesn't work.
In your community, in the Latino community, and let me just ask you that those words are not interchangeable depending on who you're talking to, right? Latino, Hispanic.
All right. I think they're in it. Well, I think
my understanding is Hispanic is from Spain,
right?
Where Latino is more America del Sur, South America,
right? Everything else. I think there are definitely differences in the way people are brought up and the way that they think, but at the end of the day, it's all the same. It's more of a social, cultural thing than anything else. But I will tell you that I've looked at hearts on Latinos and I've looked at hearts at Hispanics, and they look the same to me.
It reminds me of a wine tasting I went, and the lady was telling me about the talons.
Yeah.
She said a black tongue is no different than a white tongue. A tongue is a tongue.
That's right.
So your children, do you push them to be doctors?
No, not at all. No.
What are they looking at?
So my oldest started off in architecture and is doing construction management as well. And he's actually at LSU. And my youngest is in high school. He's gone from wanting to be a pilot to, marine biologist, lawyer. And now he thinks he may like medicine, but I'm I don't show. I poker face that. I try to keep my emotions out of that. I mean, I would love for them to follow, but they need to find their way in what makes them happy.
Well, Dr. Alvarez, my father was a funeral director.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned very early that I did not like the smell of dead people.
Oh yeah.
But vicariously, he trained me to be a journalist. And so on my mom's side, her dad was from Puerto Rico. He was in the Navy.
Okay.
And then that's how all of that came to be. So anything you want to share with the Latino, with the Hispanic community in Espanol about the significance of Hispanic Heritage Month en español, por favor. Mi español no es perfecto, pero yo hablo un poquito.
No. So la cosa más importante es saber que el salud es el más importante por todos. Y el salud es importante para usted y debe ser la cosa que enseñas y que vas a preguntar palabras que tienes con sus doctores, porque nadie más va a querer más de su salud que usted.
And for those who speak English, generally.
So basically, I just said that your health is very important. It's the most important thing to you, but no one's going to care more about your health than yourself. And so you have to advocate for yourself. You have to ask the questions and be your own advocate.
And any thoughts on mental health?
Oh, it's the same thing. Mental health is a very important thing that unfortunately has a stigmata upon people think it's more a condition, personal, but it's actually a medical problem. And we need to be very cautious and understand that, and as a community embrace that people have problems with mental health. And just the way you would treat somebody with diabetes or a heart condition, it's the same condition. And so it warrants the same concern and the same respect as these others do.
Do you foresee, what is your next goal, Doc? You're self-motivated. I mean, you want to be Surgeon General?
No, I really like my community. I'm really happy in the place that I am right now. My next goal is to help train and be hopefully a focal point for somebody within this. I have a shelf life and I realize that, but it's the legacy portion of it, right? Making sure that people realize that their community is very important and we need to invest in our community and the health, and that other people kind of carry that torch and baton. And if it means me becoming Surgeon General, then sure, great. But if not, as long as other people take on the cause the way I have, I'll die a happy man.
Has there ever been a Latino Surgeon General?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know, but I'd be willing to take a crack at it.
Have you been to Washington, D.C. lately?
Yeah, I was there actually a summer ago. We took our family vacation there and we're there for about 5-6 days, went to all the museums, and it was a sight. It was great. I love visiting D.C.
And you've got George W. Bush there. You got the Bush there. I have a colleague who's in a presidential fellows program, and he gets to talk with Bill Clinton and George Bush and some of these presidents. Can't wait to see what's next for you, Doc.
I appreciate it, Mr. Glover.
Maybe we need to name a cardiovascular unit or scholarship. Are there any scholarships that bear your name?
No scholarships. I do donate to my favorite university, the school I went to, which is UTHSCSA, the University of Texas in San Antonio. So kind of have a thriving program, up and coming program. And so that's one of the things that my wife and I, we both met in college. Well, we met in college, and we do donate for that specific reason, to make sure that people have access. So it's not the Alvarez Scholarship, but we definitely donate to the scholarship fund for them.
All right. Well, I have one final question, and it might be the most important question ever.
Yes, sir.
How do you manage all that you do, including being a father? It sounds like you're a great dad. We have the biggest challenge in relationships. Any wisdom, any advice for young people or old people? I mean, you obviously had your parents as an example, un ejemplo. Any advice on how to get along? Because, you know, this is America. God doggone it, we mess up everything. We just mess it up. We don't listen, especially as men. We just, you know, and then it's a whole new woman these days. So,
oh yeah. So I've become used to saying I'm sorry in a couple of different languages. So you have to be able to admit when you're wrong. I say I'm sorry, and I make time. You know, my partners will laugh at me, but I get here pretty early in the morning, start my day off pretty early. I get home, I go to football practices, I go to football games. I participated in all my kids' stuff. And then once everybody was asleep, I would finish up the work that I had to do, whether it was studying for something or trying to learn something new. A long time ago had told myself that I was going to go without sleep rather than my kids go without their dad. And that was kind of my steadfast rule. So I didn't sleep a whole lot when they were younger, but I was at everything, and they know I was at everything. And in fact, that was reaffirmed one time. I was at a kid's t-ball game, and I told my son that I had to leave because I was on call and there was somebody having a heart attack. And he looked at me and he goes, "Dad, it's okay. You're here more than most other dads, and we know that when you leave, it's because you're trying to save someone's life." You know, so they understood the gravity of it. But it's, you know, in relationships, it's the same thing. You know, make as much time as I dedicate to this, I dedicate the same amount of time, and know when it's family time, and nothing else is more important to me than my family time.
Okay, the only thing we haven't talked about is the big guy.
Oh yeah.
Is that a part of your life as perrito?
Absolutely. You know, guides me and gives me the opportunities to do what I do, and allows me to be where I'm at. You know, I tell people that you really have three circles of health. You have your physical, your mental, and your spiritual health. And they all have to kind of be in line with each other. And we're all made of different proportions of it, but they all affect every circle the same way. You know, you get sick, you start to get depressed, and then you ask God, why did this happen to me? You can get down into a vicious spiral. So it's the same thing goes with the success. You know, you're successful at something, you're happy, and you have to make sure that you thank God for what the opportunities he gave you.
You know, you made me think of my dad. He's been gone for a minute, but he said, with a closed hand, nothing gets in, nothing gets out. With an open hand, there are endless possibilities. The moral to the story is to help somebody. So we're going to have a toast going out the door, and it's more of a question, una pregunta. What about water? How much darn water do I have to drink? And was that even a question for you growing up in Texas? I just think of desert and hot and scorpions and getting buried in the desert if you cross the wrong people. Water. Any thoughts on water?
Right. You definitely should stay hydrated. Being hydrated is very important. You know, four 12-ounce bottles of water every day is probably pretty good. If you're not going to the bathroom at least 2 to 3 times a day, 4 times a day, then you're probably not drinking enough water. If you're when you go to the bathroom, if it has a lot of color, you're not drinking enough water.
Doc, is it anything we haven't covered that we should touch on?
No, sir. I think this has been great. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you again for following up and giving us a chance to get this right. Dr. Jorge Alvarez, MD, not just a well-versed cardiologist, but also you seem to be a great human being, and certainly a great husband and father. And much love to your family, and maybe we'll get to meet in person one day.
Yes, sir, Mr. Glover. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Que Dios te bendiga, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month to all.
And thank you, sir. Take care.
Good morning, world.